Ghosts talking to you through a phone sounds scary, but what if those ghosts are trying to help you? That's the story of Black Phone, adapted from the short story of the same name written by Joe Hill, which is a pen name for Joseph King, the son of Stephen King. But interestingly, this movie originally began as a sort of autobiography for director Scott Derrickson, who made a name for himself in horror with Sinister. Just like the main character of Black Phone, Derrickson grew up in North Denver in the 70s, and like the main character, he dealt with violence and trauma. After a few years in therapy unpacking it all, he spoke to his writing partner from Sinister, C. Robert Cargill, about doing a semi-autobiographical movie in the vein of The 400 Blows. The idea never felt interesting enough until he remembered a short story he read years ago, The Black Phone, and suddenly had the idea of combining his own childhood memories with that story. Cargill and Derrickson took a similar approach with Sinister, putting a lot of themselves into the characters. I think that's part of what makes the characters' fears and anxieties feel so real and personal in both movies. It's an unexpected origin for a horror movie, and appropriately, the first time I watched it, it was definitely not what I expected from a movie billed as horror. It certainly is horrifying, but not in the way you expect. Because yes, it has ghosts, but they aren't the scary part. Instead, the threat is something horrifyingly real. A guy who abducts children. That could easily be the premise of a disturbing mystery thriller, straddling the line of horror. But the movie takes a bigger step in that direction by giving the killer a mask that makes him feel more than human at times, like a demon or monster. And of course, the ghosts who call the main character on the phone. They are friendly ghosts, but can still make for a suitably unsettling mood. The other surprising thing about this movie is that it has a warmth at the center of it. That comes from Finny's relationship with the friendly ghosts, the way he and his sister look out for each other, and all that stuff seems even brighter in contrast to the horrible darkness of everything else. So the movie is scary in the same way things are scary in the real world, and it is tense in the way life or death scenarios are, but what surprised me is how it strayed away from the supernatural or unknown horror you expect from the writer-director team of Sinister. The movie starts in the idyllic North Denver 1978. So idyllic, it's barely even sad when 13-year-old Finny loses his baseball game. You expect the guy from the other team to tell him how much he sucks, but instead...
Man, your arm is mint. You almost had me.
Good game.
That's Bruce. Everyone loves Bruce. The girls want to date him, the boys want to be him. Sadly, this is where his story ends. As he rides his bike home, a black van cuts him off. Fade to black. The horrible things in this movie feel especially horrible because it all feels so real, partly thanks to the genuine performances, especially impressive considering mostly they come from child actors, and partly because the story is so personal to Derrickson. There's also the fact that this movie does a great job making you like and care about the characters, like how you expect Bruce to be a jerk after the game, but instead, he's incredibly kind. Finny's home is not a happy one. His father is abusive, and breakfasts are spent tiptoeing around the kitchen. Anything louder than a mouse earns the inevitable ire. The only bright spot is Finny's younger sister, Gwen. The two are close and look out for each other. Like Bruce, Gwen's character doesn't play out how you'd expect. Any other movie would have the older brother putting on a brave face for his young sister. There's some of that here, but it's much more of a two-way street. When Gwen startles her father by opening the toaster oven a little too loud, she gives Finny a playful look afterward to lighten the mood. On the walk to school, they spot a fresh flyer for the missing kid, Bruce. Finny, ever the optimist, wonders, new flyers must mean they think there's a chance of finding him, but Gwen knows they won't, at least not the way they want. How does she know? We'll soon find out. She is a bit of a clairvoyant. At school, they find the class bully Moose picking on Robin. Moose thinks he's picked an easy target, but Robin knows what he's doing, gets him on the ground and punches him in the face way too many times, 20 by my count. According to Gwen, Robin is the toughest kid in school ever since the grabber got Pinball Vance Hopper. I wish I could have a nickname like that. No, not the grabber, the pinball thing. The grabber is what they're calling the guy behind the abductions. Yeah, Bruce wasn't the first. In class, we meet Finny's pen and his crush. Wow, that is an awesome pen. Where can I get one of those? I can't. Apparently, it's just a prop. You can't just make up a pen. It violates the verisimilitude. After class, Finny bolts to the bathroom. Too long in the hall risks attention from bullies, which I can relate to. Back in my school days, if I caught a nerd wandering the halls, let's just say Ethan Hawke in a mask would be the least of their problems. The bullies find Finny, but bully for them, Robin shows up, and his presence alone is enough to scare them off. We learn a little more about Finny and Robin's friendship. They share a love of movies, and Finny often helps Robin with schoolwork. This movie makes it so easy to get bought into these characters and friendships. Robin has confidence and a proclivity for bullying bullies, but combined with humility, he isn't afraid to ask Finny for tutoring help when he needs it. That all makes him so likable, and then a couple of movie references sell the friendship, because who hasn't bonded with someone over movies?
I've seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre Friday night. You seen it? It's the best. Ever.
Better than Enter the Dragon.
Well, okay, maybe second best.
Meanwhile, Gwen gets taken out of class by a couple of detectives. Apparently, she told Amy Yamada, the missing Bruce's sister, about a dream she had. She saw Bruce taken by a man with black balloons in a van. That's weird because the cops have been finding black balloons at the scenes of the abductions, but they never publicly released those details. How could she know about them? Her apparent clairvoyance is our first introduction to the supernatural in this world. We see more of Gwen's self-assured character here when she loses patience with the cops. When they press her to explain how she could possibly know about the balloons, she sarcastically asks if they think she herself is the grabber, though she phrases it a little less politely than I did.
Because obviously I'm the grabber, you dumb fucking fart knockers.
Gwendolyn Blake!
Her character could easily come across cheesy or disingenuous, but Madeline McGraw does a great job in the role. The next morning, Finny wakes up to the sounds of his sister crying and his father's belt. The police came to his work, asking questions about her after they heard about her dream. He tells his daughter that she is not her mother. She does not hear or see things that aren't there. This scene is so hard to watch, thanks to McGraw's performance as Gwen and Jeremy Davies as her father, who plays angry, yes, but also self-hatred and fear of Gwen's apparent abnormality. One of my favorite choices in the scene is how he makes Gwen repeat 3 times, "My dreams are just dreams." But on the 3rd time, she says it with anger and defiance.
My dreams are just dreams!
Apparently, Derrickson was asked by a lot of people to cut the scene because it's so intense. But I think it was right to leave it in. The horror of this movie is the vulnerability of children and adults who exploit that. This scene, according to Derrickson, is pulled from his own childhood memories, and it's part of the personal picture that he's painting. Of course, it's hard to watch, but every awful thing in this movie feeds into the catharsis that comes later. Elsewhere in town, Robin is walking when he comes upon a man in a black van. Fade to black. When Robin doesn't come home, everyone knows what happened. It was the grabber. That night, Finny asks Gwen if she can try to do her dream thing. Maybe she can find Robin, but it's not really something she can control. But she does try. She even asks Jesus for help. The next day, with no Robin around, the bullies have free reign on Finny, until Gwen, the Mikasa to Finny's Aaron, shows them what a rock does to teenage boys' skulls.
Fucking cocksucking cowards!
Such a great character. Things get better in class because today is the day they get to dissect frogs, and Finny gets his crush as a partner. Do kids still dissect frogs in school? I'm sure kids these days can't handle it. Back in my day, we had to kill the frogs ourselves. And first, they'd make us give them names and bond with them, all to teach us a valuable lesson. Sometimes in life, you have to kill your friend, cut them open, and find their nictating membranes. On the walk home, things only get better because Finny happens upon a magician with a black van and black balloons. Yes, this is the grabber, and he does grab Finny, then lock him up in the basement, where yes, there is a black phone which isn't connected to anything, yet somehow it rings. Finny picks up, but is interrupted by the grabber, who tells him to hang up. This is a good time to shout out Ethan Hawke's performance. Sometimes he speaks in a childish voice, at other times he's more straightforward in his menace, but a degree of it is always present, and it's especially uncomfortable given how genuine his performances feel. When the grabber leaves him, Finny screams, but the soundproofing ensures silence to the outside world. He explores his surroundings, looking for a way out, but quickly decides he really is trapped. Until he gets a call, and this time there is a voice on the other end that whispers his name. Finny hangs up, until it rings again, and this time he listens. Who is on the line? The person speaking doesn't remember his own name, because that's the first thing you lose. But he met Finny once.
Your arm is mint. You almost had me.
Yes, that's Bruce. And although the dead are not a threat in this movie, there is still something unsettling about them. The confusion in how they can't remember their own names, the whisper at first, like he's struggling to get through from the other side, and the repetition. He'll say, "Your arm is mint," multiple times, but not in a way that seems intentional, and not with the emotion or inflection a living person would use. Without getting explicit about the experience of death, the movie implies an uncomfortable in-between state, where you're there but fading, and that's not a fun thing to think about. Bruce provides Finny some useful information. There's a section of the floor in the hallway where the tile is loose. Finny should dig down underneath the foundation. Bruce himself tried, but there wasn't enough time for him to dig up and out the other side. That night, Gwen has one of her dreams. She sees Bruce, his abduction, Finny shouting for help from inside a house. Which house? She wakes up in the middle of the night and goes looking, but no luck yet. In that house, Finny gets to work on the dirt. The sun comes up, the grabber drops off breakfast and forgets to lock the door behind him, but the phone rings and a voice warns Finny not to take the bait. This isn't Bruce, but another dead boy named Billy. This time, we see his image, while Finny only hears his voice. He warns that the grabber is waiting at the top of the stairs with a belt, waiting for Finny to give him an excuse to use it. Sure enough, he is up there waiting, no shirt, and the frown on his mask turned downside up. I don't actually know if that made sense. What I'm trying to say is that the expression on his mask is now a frown rather than a smile. We see 3 versions of it in the movie, one with no mouth, one with a smile, and one with a frown. On top of that, sometimes the grabber wears the top half and sometimes he doesn't. The mask itself was designed by Tom Savini, a legend in makeup and special effects. He worked on the original Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th, and more. The next time Finny gets a call, it's Billy again, with more info. When he was down there, he tore a long cable loose from where the wall is separated from the floor. What is Finny supposed to do with it? As an answer, the unseen spirit points a bottle at the window. Perhaps Finny can use the cable to get out that window. At school, Gwen is allowed a nap at the nurse's office, where this time she dreams of Pinball Vance and gets a better look at the house. Time to hit the road and search again. In the basement, Finny manages to get the cable around the window bars, but the weight of him climbing that cable pulls the bars off, sending him tumbling to the floor. I appreciate how while the ghosts obviously help Finny, they aren't a cheat code that lets him off the hook from having to save himself. They'll tell Finny, for example, you should use the cable on the window, but he still has to figure out how. He can't exactly lasso it up there, but he comes up with the idea of taking a rolled up carpet and threading the cable through so he can better guide it into position. Back home, Gwen asks her dad about the dreams. If they contain truth, maybe they could help find her brother. But her dad warns, her mother saw things too, and eventually the dreams told her to do things, terrible things. So she took her own life. Her father does actually help her though, taking her for a ride to look for the house she saw in her dreams. More of that complexity. Their father is a bad man in a lot of ways, but not in every action he takes. The detectives are also investigating, asking around the neighborhood. At one house, they find Max, Deputy So-and-so from Sinister. Derrickson decided to bring James Ranson back to bring some levity to the movie. Max turns out to be a wannabe detective, though he's done good work, mapping out all the abductions and getting a general idea where the grabber must live. The detectives might give him some credence, but they also notice the lines of cocaine on the coffee table. They leave, and as he gets rid of that coke by stashing it into his nasal cavity, the camera pans down to Finny in the basement. Wait a minute, what? So this whole time the grabber has been overly stressed, like things are going wrong in a way they haven't before, and he talks about how no one can hear you scream in the basement, but specifically he said he won't hear you. Now we know why. His brother Max is crashing with him upstairs, but Max is either too dumb or clouded by drugs that while deep into research on where to find the grabber, he hasn't realized he's living with him, and that the latest missing kid is in the basement. I have to admit, the character is funny, and this is a movie that risks straying so dark it's unenjoyable, but I don't know, the absurdity of this character might be over the line. Ultimately, it isn't much of a factor though, since he doesn't actually have that much screen time, so it's more of a nitpick. That night, the grabber tries the same old trick. Leave the door open and hope Finny takes the bait. Only this time, the grabber falls asleep, and Finny knows it because another ghost boy, Griffin, tells him so. Now, this time, rather than simply call, Griffin first appears as a floating corpse pointing at the phone. Rude! The other kids just called. They didn't feel the need to give him more nightmare fuel first. This is something that happens with horror movies that aren't quite horror movies. It's like they're uncomfortable with their ambiguous place in the genre, so they try to become more firmly horror by inserting these creepy elements, even if they don't necessarily make sense. I felt somewhat similarly with the movie Weapons. Watch that review to see what I mean. Before Finny can try to creep out of the house while the grabber is asleep, Griffin also tells him more about the killer's methods. Finny asks why he isn't dead yet, and Griffin explains how first, the grabber needs you to play naughty boy, as in you need to do something wrong so he can beat you. Then he can move on to his favorite part. What he actually does to the kids and what is his favorite part, I think is for the best left to the imagination of the audience. Time for Finny to make his escape, except Griffin warns there's a combo lock on the door upstairs, the one that leads outside. The grabber got that lock off Griffin's bike, but he can hardly remember his own name, let alone the combo. Griffin does remember being afraid he'd forget it, and he remembers carving it on the wall in the basement. Just one problem.
23317?
If you say so.
What is it, 23317 or 23317 or 23317?
He can't remember. Finny will have to try them all. A great way to build suspense in the escape. This sequence overall helps the pace of the movie, which risks feeling repetitive, especially with a lot of it taking place in one basement. But there's enough to Gwen's story on the outside world, and the ghostly calls escalate enough that it keeps things interesting. Now it culminates in a potential escape. Finny does manage to get out, but not without alerting the dog, waking up the grabber and getting caught all over again.
You say one fucking word, and I will gut you like a pig right here in the street.
The grabber also promises to strangle him with his own intestines, and then...
Nighty-night, naughty boy.
Hawk's performance is always menacing, but generally calm, so when he curses and speaks with such explicit violence, it has a really chilling effect. And what happens next is left off-screen, so we can assume Finny has lost the game of Naughty Boy, which means the grabber can move on to the next part. It's no surprise Finny is in his worst mood yet the next morning. Gwen, too, is unhappy.
Jesus, what the fuck? I mean, what the fuck?
She's angry at the dreams with only vague clues, and last night, no dreams at all. Now she's wondering if maybe he isn't even real, and she isn't the only one angry at cosmic forces.
Fuck you.
This time, it's Pinball Vance calling with some bad news. Today is the day Finny will die. Who is this Mr. Pinball, by the way? A flashback reveals that, you're not going to believe this, he loved pinball, and beating to a pulp anyone who messed with his game. It's important to have hobbies. This flashback also turns out to be the answer to Gwen's prayers, because she enters it in a dream. She joins Vance in the back of a cop car, and then Gwen hears Vance's phone call with Finny. To her, it appears like Vance is speaking to him by yelling into the police radio.
Right here. This is it. The horrifying nightmare end of your pathetic little life.
Most importantly, the car stops at the grabber's house, and this time, Gwen sees a lot of detail, enough to finally find it in real life. Meanwhile, Vance and Finny are still talking. The ghost offers more advice. Across from the toilet, there's an outlet. If he breaks through the wall above it, he'll get to a panel on the back of a freezer. Get through that, then out the freezer. It should get him into the storage room. This call ends more violently than the others. Vance is perturbed when Finny thanks him for the help, because Vance isn't doing it for him. This is about revenge, as he shouts, It's as though some invisible force yanks him back into darkness. This reiterates that feeling. The ghosts don't have free reign to do as they please. They can cross over to the other side for moments, they can reach out, but eventually they get pulled back. Finny manages to get through the wall, the panel, but once he's in the freezer, finds that it's locked from the outside. Another dead end. Now he's about ready to give up, except one more call, this time from a friend. Robin. Finny hasn't seen any of these ghosts, only heard them, but Robin can see him, and he tells Finny that he's been here the whole time, and now he has some final advice to offer. Time to stand up for yourself. Here's the plan. Fill the phone receiver with dirt to give it heft. Then, practice.
You raise the phone, take a fast step back, step forward, step back, and swing.
It was definitely the right call to save Robin for last. He's the one Finny was most connected to in the real world, and his appearance lands with so much impact because it's also when Finny is at his lowest point. He's been through hell. Every step of the way it seems like there might be a way out, and then it's yanked away from him. So to have this friend show up now and impart one last lesson on how to fight, it's so impactful and imprints that theme onto this movie. Resilience. It was especially impactful actually seeing Robin in the scene, training alongside him, and it wasn't in the original script. In the original, he was just there as a voice. But on set, Derrickson realized it would be better with the visual, so they had the actor Miguel Mora fly back, and I think that was definitely for the best. Under Robin's guidance, Finny practices the attack maneuver again and again, until they say goodbye and hang up this final call. Finny fills the phone with dirt and makes some other preparations. Not just him though, Gwen also finds the house. She's sure of it because there are a bunch of ghost kids in front of it. Also, Max finally realizes that his brother's house, the house he's crashing in, is right in the middle of where he suspects the grabber lives. So he works up the nerve, heads to the basement, and spots Finny. Right before the grabber puts an axe in his skull. It's Dick Halloran from The Shining all over again. Or groundskeeper Willie from The Shining.
Alright, loony, show me what you got.
The grabber turns to Finny and calls for his dog, but the grabber has no idea what he's up against. Finny uses everything the ghosts gave him. He trips the grabber with that cable, so he falls down the hole Finny dug in the dirt, breaking his foot on the metal bars from the window, waiting for him at the bottom of the pit. Finny beats him with the phone, removes his mask, and turns him into a screaming mess. Finally, he strangles him with the phone cable itself, but just before he dies, it rings again. The ghosts are back to taunt him, laugh at him, and enjoy Finny's revenge on their behalf. Once the grabber is dead, Finny pacifies the dog with steaks from the freezer, enters the combo in the lock upstairs, and finally leaves the house. During the final call with Robin, the ending was already set up, and I had no doubt Finny would persevere over the killer, but the movie goes the extra mile by tying everything together in a satisfying way, where each ghost kid's contribution plays a role. The dirt pit, metal bars, cable, and even the steaks from the freezer. Plus, there's the additional catharsis of the kids' presence on the final call, getting to share in Finny's victory. The cops, meanwhile, led by Gwen, find the house, but it's an empty house, because the grabber has two houses across the street from each other. One where he lives and keeps the current victim locked in the basement, and this one where he buries the bodies. When Finny leaves the other house, he finds them outside. He finds Gwen, and they embrace. Their dad even joins them and begs their forgiveness, which goes along with what Derrickson told the actor he wanted out of his performance. Per the commentary, "I don't want you to play him as a villain. I want you to play him as a man in pain." Further on the commentary, Derrickson says the black phone is about childhood trauma, but also children's resiliency. Gwen's resilience in the face of her father's beating, Finny's resilience, and the resilience of all the spirits who aided him. He goes on to speak about how the movie also contains a message for adults.
It's the story of our lives is how we allow pain and suffering to push us either toward terrible things, addictions and escapism and abuse of others, or we let it push us toward growth. And
it isn't explicitly in the movie, but you can assume the grabber didn't come up with things like Naughty Boy on his own. There's a good chance he was once a victim of abuse as well. Cargill said this in his interview with Creative Screenwriting. The grabber is the child of trauma, much like Finny and Gwen, but he allowed that trauma to transform him into a monster. He has ritualized his killings, hinting at a similar previous abuse that makes him what he is. And if his brother suffered some of that abuse too, we see another way things can go. The grabber became an abuser, and his brother became a drug abuser. Finny and Gwen, with their resilience, are on a better path. And there's some indication the grabber had that option too when he was younger. He says to Finny at one point about the phone, "It doesn't work, not since I was a kid." So as a child, maybe he was getting calls too, offering similar assistance, but he went a different way. That ghost kid also told Finny the grabber hears the phone too, but he doesn't want to believe it. So even as an adult, he still hears the calls but ignores them, an echo from childhood, a reminder of who he's become and what he could have been, an echo that he's chosen to ignore. Back in school, Finny gets a little victory lap, strolling with confidence and even talking to the girl.
Hi, Finny.
I'm a Finn.
That brings us to the end. You might have some questions about the supernatural elements in the movie. Are there any theories or explanations? Given Gwen and her mother's visions, clearly this is a world where some people, maybe you can call them psychics, are sensitive to grander forces, a combination of remote viewing, clairvoyance, and speaking to spirits of the dead. Perhaps Finny also has some of that sensitivity, so when ghosts try to reach out, he's one of the few who can hear them. Finny even asks one of the ghosts, "Did the phone ring for you?" And he answers, "It rang, but none of us heard it." So my assumption is only those who are psychically sensitive could have heard it. Anyway, Black Phone 2 is around the corner, so Cargill and Derrickson may expand on things there. We'll see, and I'll see you back here after that movie comes out for another breakdown.